Good evening, everyone. If everyone can take their seats, please. Well, welcome to the Special Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting on the 19th of September 2022. Before we commence the meeting, I ask that we turn all mobile phones off or switch them to silent, please. Thank you. My name is Councillor Gary Thompson and I'm the chair of this committee. The Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting is being live streamed on the Council website to enable public viewing of the proceedings, including councillor deliberations and voting. The meeting will be recorded and made available on the Council website as soon as practically possible after the Council meeting has concluded. Should there be technical issues this evening, the meeting will be adjourned until the problem is resolved, or if needed, the meeting will be postponed. I'll start by introducing my fellow councillors and officers in the chamber this evening. Seated to my left at the horseshoe table closest to me, Councillor Jim Park, Councillor Cynthia Watson, Councillor Nick Stavrou, our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Wes Galt, Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth, and opposite Councillor Hollingsworth, we have our Mayor, Councillor Jane Addis, Councillor Di Gillies, Councillor Felicity Sinfield, Councillor Susan Bigger, and Councillor Victor Franco. Other officers in attendance this evening, seated behind Councillor Galt, is Philip Storer, the Chief Executive Officer. Seated to my immediate right, your left, is our Director of Urban Living, Scott Walker. Seated to his right is David Cowan, Manager of Strategic and Statutory Planning. Seated to my left is our Manager of Governance and Legal, Brian Wee, and to his left, Liam Merrifield, Senior Governance Officer. There'll also be a number of other officers in attendance this evening, and they'll be introduced as they present their reports. Essentially, the planning of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee is to deal with issues under the Planning and Environment Act and the Building Act. This committee has delegated authority to make decisions on behalf of Council. Councillors are familiar with the report, which includes a summary of objections received. For those in the gallery presenting this evening, when we come to the agenda item, you'll be introduced and I'll then call you up one by one to come forward and present to the committee. If you're making a submission, please present your viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you support or oppose the planning application. Please don't repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep submissions focused on relevant issues and points not previously raised. If you're opposed to the planning application, please inform the committee why you're opposed and suggest an alternative approach which may satisfy your concerns. Please focus on concerns rather than matters of history or detail in the officer's report. There is a strict time limit of 3 minutes for every presenter, and whilst as chairperson I reserve the right to adjust that. Given tonight there will be a number of presenters, I shall not be doing so. I'll ask speakers to stand get seated at the horseshoe table just in front of me, and at the 2.5 minute mark, I'll ring the bell indicating that you've got 30 seconds to conclude your presentation. Mr. Wee, are there any apologies this evening?
Through you, Chair, there are no apologies this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Wee. We'll turn to item 1, adoption and confirmation of the minutes of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting held on the 5th of September 2022. Councillors, I'm in search of a motion to move and adopt the minutes. Mover, Councillor Sinfield.
Happy to.
Thank you. And seconder, Councillor Gillies. Is there any opposition on that item? There being no opposition, I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Move to item 2, declaration of conflict of interest of any councillor or council officer. Are there any conflicts of interest this evening? There being no conflicts of interest. So we'll move to our agenda papers. Councillors, Before we turn our minds to the agenda papers, in accordance with Rule 19.2, councillors, I'm seeking the consent of council to bring forward item 3.2, community nomination process, with the intent that a councillor will move a motion to defer this item. And I'll be very specific on this consent, councillors. In considering this item, the intent is for the efficiency of the meeting, and any community presentations will be heard at a later stage in accordance with Rule 88.8.1 as the Chair's discretion, and officers will not be presenting their report. Should consent not be given tonight, we will revert back to the agenda papers and we'll hear all presentations. I'm seeking consent by a show of hands, so councillors, I'm in search of a show of hands for consent to bring forward that item. And those against? Okay, that is carried, so we'll bring forward that item 3.2, and for the purpose of the gallery, we'll explain a little bit about this shortly. So item 3.2, community heritage nomination process. The officer's recommendation is on the screen. Councillors, I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. I have a deferral motion that I think the officers have handy.
And the motion is that the matter is deferred for further consideration and to be brought back to a future Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting for decision. To assist Councillor Sinfield, is there a seconder to this motion? There is a seconder in Councillor Gillies. Is there anyone opposed to this motion this evening? There being no one opposed, Councillor Sinfield, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I do, thank you, Chair. Colleagues, our community have told us how important heritage is to them, and this agenda item has had a couple of false starts as the concept matures and evolves, but I think it's really important to get it right. The Boroondara Community Plan 21 to 31 sets out our 10-year vision for Boroondara's future based on values, aspirations, priorities that are important to the community. In 2017 and again in 2021, our community ranked neighbourhood character and heritage as highly important. The strategic objective for this theme is to protect the heritage and respect the character of Boroondara while facilitating appropriate, well-designed development. I think everyone in this room would agree that the adoption of a community heritage nomination process would assist in implementing the strategic theme number 4 of the plan, and more specifically, that heritage places are protected through ongoing implementation of heritage protection controls in the Boroondara planning scheme. Engaging with owners, strategy 4.6, and developers to achieve the right balance is also really important. Now, this matter was considered by UPDC in May, and the Heritage Advisory Committee that I chair has met twice since then and continued to discuss this matter. However, we appear to be at a bit of an impasse with council officers who are recommending a process and the content of this report tonight. Now, I'm not seeking for officers to change their position, but I'm seeking further time to further refine this process to make sure that we're truly representing the community who have spoken very clearly to us. Several of my colleagues and I continue to feel that this doesn't align with community expectations, and I suspect that by having so many community members here tonight that there may well be a shared feeling in the room. I appreciate Council's strategic planning team has received an increasing number of requests from community members and groups to assess protected properties through inclusion in heritage overlays, but we need to ask ourselves why that is too. I also appreciate that assessing and processing these nominations individually is resource intensive and has limited the strategic planning team's ability to deliver other important strategic planning projects. But we know that this is important to our community, and as such, Council ought to reconsider the resources allocated to this department, perhaps, and that's a discussion that we need to have as a council with the CEO and so forth. Now, I believe that there are several factors that have contributed to the increase in community nominations in recent times, but primarily the pandemic. I think keeping people close to their neighbourhood and appreciating what's in their own backyard is really important, and it's one of the key reasons that I think we've seen an increase in the last couple of years. Now, a review of the Heritage Action Plan is scheduled for the 22-23 financial year, and we believe that an overarching municipal heritage strategy is probably what's needed looking forward. So I'd like the opportunity to have further time with the Heritage Advisory Committee members and officers as we work through some of those. Now, many of you have attended tonight to speak to the Council or UPDC, and I'm sure that there's probably mixed emotions about the path that this is heading down. So I want to assure the community present tonight that hold heritage close to their heart as I do, that we welcome your submissions by email. Anything that you wanted to say this evening, we welcome your prepared notes or speeches to come through to us by email. And we'll make sure that we work with the Heritage Advisory Committee members and officers, my colleagues, Councillor Hollingsworth and Councillor Gillies, to make sure that we take your feedback into consideration. So I'm going to propose that the decision on this matter is deferred to allow further consideration of a few key matters, including but not limited to discussion about the commencement of a municipal heritage strategy, how properties nominated for regrading will be handled, the development of a practice guide, because we all know that details are important, a register of properties nominated by the community for discussion at Heritage Advisory Committee meetings, broadening inclusion of all HERCON criteria with regard to new information, and a reduction from 10 years to 5 years for eligibility for review. So in conjunction with my Heritage Advisory Committee colleagues, Councillor Hollingsworth and Councillor Gillies, sorry, I should probably retract that last sentence because Councillor Hollingsworth and I are not necessarily quite on the same page in relation to this, but we have prepared a deferral motion and I commend that to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Councillors, I recognise this is a very important subject for many of you. So if any other councillors wish to speak to this item, otherwise I will just conclude with a few comments. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Look, firstly, I want to thank Councillor Sinfield for putting forward the motion and articulating quite comprehensive commentary to it. I would very much like to support the motion. In fact, I will support the motion, but I didn't support not enabling members of our gallery to present tonight because I know that many have invested considerable time and they have matters that they believe are important for us to hear. But I do respect the will of the majority of councillors here tonight. I do agree that certainly a lot more needs to be done, and I want to thank Councillor Gillies and Councillor Sinfield for working with me throughout the weekend, putting together what may have been possible to share tonight, but knowing that it's something that will take a little bit of more time to construct in a way that may be palatable to all members in the chamber and officers included. So I thank Councillor Sinfield for her motion. I will support it. I'm just disappointed that we don't hear the gallery speak tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. I've got Councillor Franco.
Thank you. I share the views of Councillor Hollingsworth. I would have appreciated the opportunity to hear members of the community who've made the effort to come here tonight. This is a long process, and I'm pleased that we're at least on a journey in terms of developing a process. I think there's a lot more work to be done, and I think Councillor Sinfield has made those comments very eloquently. And I'll just conclude. Some people raised with me the issue of some members of the community today raised the example of the Boyd House and whether that would have even been considered under this process. And for me, I mean, I think if the Boyd House couldn't have been protected, it's telling about perhaps a deficiency that I see in this process as we have it today. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Any further councillors? I might just say a few words. I echo Councillor Sinfield moving this motion for a deferral. I'd say to all of the gallery that have come tonight, thank you for your interest in this topic. This is a very important topic for our community. It's certainly a topic that's very important for us as councillors, and we need to give it the time to actually get it right. And to Councillor Franco's comments, the Tannock Street property, which is a Robin Boyd house, is the litmus test, to which I think we are all very appreciative that that building is now protected and it came out of a community nomination. So I think that's the benchmark for which we need to set ourselves for. Obviously, we've got a little bit of work that we need to do before this is actually considered in its entirety. But I would encourage all presenters this evening to, if you've got a written submission that you are going to read out, please email that to us so that we can take that into consideration. And at some point in the future, not too distant future, we will be presenting something which will have a little bit more robustness to it and also seek some good consultation in the process. I'm going to refer back to the mover of the motion, Councillor Sinfield, to close out debate.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think there's really anything substantive to add other than it was probably remiss of me not to thank officers for bringing us to this point. There's been a great body of work that has been done for which I'm appreciative, but we can continue to work on this together and evolve this process a little bit further. Thank you.
Sorry, on that basis, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We won't be taking questions from the gallery at the moment, but what I will indicate is we're going to be moving on to item 3.1. The gallery is more than welcome to stay for this item and the next item. I think the time frame will be fairly short to deal with these, and should there be any questions, I'm sure officers might be able to assist with some questions after the meeting. So we're going to move to item 3.1 of the agenda papers, which is 104 Doncaster Road, Balwyn North, the construction of 5 townhouse dwellings. This will be introduced by Chiara Lorini, Statutory Planner. Thank you, Chiara.
Good evening, everyone. The application at 104 Doncaster Road, Balwyn North, is for the construction of 5 double-storey attached townhouses. The site is located within the General Residential Zone Schedule 5 and is not covered by any planning overlays. The original application attracted 38 objections. The response to objections is located on pages 21 to 24 of the report. During the application process, the plans have been amended to respond to policy, referrals and objections received. The latest set of plans received on the 24th of June 2022 include a reduction and modification of the central dwelling to break the built form along the length, increased rear setback and alteration to the roof forms. The proposal is responsive to the neighbourhood character and existing streetscape rhythm in that it presents as a single dwelling to the streetscape. It incorporates with the scale and setbacks of adjacent dwellings. It incorporates a pitched roof form typical of the area and takes particular design cues from the prominent early dwelling located next door at 106 Doncaster Road. And it also provides adequate area for landscaping to the rear and the front garden, including canopy tree planting. The proposal complies with regard to car parking provision and also broadly complies with the requirements of Res Code. The primary Res Code non-compliance is with regard to provision of total private open space. The central 3 dwellings are each provided with private courtyards of 30 square metres. While this is adequate with regard to secluded private open space, it represents a shortfall of 10 square metres for overall open space. This is typically provided via a front garden or similar, which is not readily possible with this townhouse style of dwelling. In this instance, the shortfall is considered acceptable. The dwellings presented in this proposal represent a range of dwelling choices for prospective occupants. In addition, the site is well situated within proximity to local activity areas and open spaces. Conditions have been imposed with regard to compliance with Res Code accessibility objectives. The removal of the stairs to the pedestrian entrance will ensure the dwellings are accessible for persons with limited mobility. The amended plans provide additional glazing to the western ground floor to the central dwellings, which addresses concerns with regard to the single aspect of these dwellings. This alteration will provide greater light access to these living areas and will be ensured via permit condition. Conditions have also been imposed with regard to the front boundary treatment for materiality and visual permeability to ensure a more cohesive design outcome with the proposed dwellings. Based on the high level of compliance with Res Code and neighbourhood character policy, it is recommended that the application be supported this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Lorini. Councillors, we have 2 presenters on this item this evening. 1 for and I believe 1 against. I'll call forward our first presenter, Mrs. Indra Tan. If you can come forward, please. Thank you, Mrs. Yes, just to the right. Sorry, to your left. That one there. Thank you. And Mrs. Tan, if you can just pull that microphone closer to you. There we go. And there we go. Wonderful.
Thank you.
And if we can just commence with your name and your suburb and whether you support the officer's recommendation or oppose it, and your 3-minute presentation. Thank you.
Sure. Good evening, councillors. My name is Indra Tan from 2 Thackeray Street, Balwyn North, and I am in support of what council is proposing, but we do have some reservations in some items. So I represent the residents of Thackeray Street who object to this development of 5 townhouses on a land of only 820 square metres. We have read the documents and it seems likely that council will approve this development with permit conditions. Our question is, should not these conditions be firstly fulfilled prior to the permit being issued, as some of these conditions may impact the design of the development? For example, one of the conditions is to provide access for people of limited mobility. At the moment, the documents do not include ramps to access the development. This may affect the design of the development. The second example is waste management. There is limited details on storage and collection of waste. Development is to include 3 bins per townhouse, meaning 15 bins are required in the basement and 15 bins will be for collection on the nature strip. As you know, this development is 1 property away from junction of Thackeray Street and Doncaster Road, and many cars come down, hurtling down Doncaster Road, and many accidents have occurred at this junction. With a tram stop nearby, visitor parking on Doncaster Road, and 15 bins for collection, we need to mitigate traffic accidents. So we need more details on waste management, and again, this may affect the design of the development. The third example, we are disappointed that the mature golden elm tree at the south boundary will be removed with this development. However, we are appeased that a 12-metre high canopy tree is one of the conditions to be met to replace the golden elm tree. Currently, the documents are only showing a 4-metre high canopy tree replacing this golden elm. So we need to have the 12-metre high canopy tree included in the documents, please. The fourth example, the use of a turntable in this development signify to us that the land is overdeveloped. We ask council to consider whether design with less townhouses be sought that requires no turntable. If a turntable is accepted, this will be a precedent to allow other developments to have turntables. Then all the neighbouring residents who have lived here for longer than 30 years will be impacted by the noise and vibrations of turntables, especially us living behind this development. If a permit is granted, we need more details to be provided, such as make, model and maintenance schedule of the turntable. Alternatively, to reduce the amount of townhouses to 4 or less. These are just some of the conditions that are included in the documents. So in summary, please consider making the conditions be fulfilled prior to issuing the permit. We thank Council for holding this meeting and letting me present, and for supporting our issues and concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Tan, and spot on for time. Councillors, are there any questions for Mrs. Tan this evening? There appears to be none, so you may return to the gallery. Thank you, Mrs. Tan.
Thank you.
Our second and last presenter is Mr. Patrick Brennan from Contour Consultants. Mr. Brennan, if we can just commence with your name and obviously your company and who you're representing. Sure.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, councillors. My name's Patrick Brennan. I'm one of the directors at Contour Consultants, and we represent Jafari Property Group, who are the applicants. I just want to firstly start by saying thank you to Chiara in particular and the officers for putting this up to the council and for working with us over the last couple of years to get the application before you. As the officer report outlines, this is an application for 5 two-storey family-sized dwellings. The site is in close proximity to a neighbourhood activity centre, the Balwyn North Neighbourhood Activity Centre. We're on a main road, we're on a tram route, we're in the general residential zone, and that's an important distinction. We're in the general residential zone, not the neighbourhood residential zone. And the settings for the general residential zone are slightly different. They encourage housing at increased densities, a diversity of housing types, in particular in locations that are well served by transport and services as this is. The Boroondara planning scheme also encourages housing at increased densities to relieve, in these locations, to relieve the pressure on in areas within the neighbourhood residential zone and the residential hinterland. And it also encourages a mix of housing to suit a range of household types, including families. So these are all things that the project delivers and responds positively to. The other key consideration here is res code, and as outlined in the report, the proposal achieves a high level of compliance. The other consideration is neighbourhood character, and as outlined in the report, the proposal is consistent with both the existing and preferred future character for the area. So these things, together with the policy support, provide very strong support for this application and this type of development. And look, and the outcome is that the planning officers are supportive, the council's traffic engineers are supportive, the council's urban designer is supportive, the arborist is supportive, the waste engineers are supportive, and the other departments that the application was referred to are all supportive, subject to some conditions. We acknowledge that there are some conditions that have been proposed, and we accept all of these conditions, and they include things dealing with some minor increased setbacks, additional landscaping and planting of canopy trees, and some minor changes to design detail and materiality, along with the things that Chiara mentioned in terms of accessibility. We acknowledge that there have been some comments from neighbours, and we don't dismiss these, but as I've said, the council's internal departments are supportive of all of these technical issues and matters that have been raised, and those issues, in our view, do not outweigh the very strong support in the planning scheme, the fact that proposal achieves a high level of compliance with res code, and that all of the council's departments are supportive, as I've noted. So we respectfully ask that the council officer's recommendation be supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Brennan. Councillors, are there any questions of Mr Brennan? Councillor Bigger.
Yes, thank you. I just had a question, I guess, about trees. I understand the arborist is supportive. It was a bit shocking to do a count. I think it was maybe 30 trees. Could that be right? They were coming out?
There are a substantial number of trees that are proposed to be removed. We submitted an arborist report which assessed the quality of all of those trees on site and some on adjoining sites. From memory, I think there's only one could be considered to be of even moderate retention value.
And that's not the golden elm that the resident just spoke about, or is it?
I believe there's a tree at the southeast corner, which I believe may be the tree that she's referring to. The assessment of that tree, I believe, is that it'd be of moderate protection value. What we're proposing is replacement with another substantial tree, so that to continue to contribute to that the broader landscape character and this green spine along the rear of these properties.
And so by substantial, is that, because she made the distinction between, she's saying that the plans say 4 metre, but it had said 12. Is that a 4 metre tree? Because it would be a different amount of space, presumably, than a 12 metre tree.
In terms of the height that it would
expected
grow to?
height, yes.
I believe the condition requirement, which we accept, is that it be a tree that grows to, and correct me if I'm wrong, officers, to at least 12 metres. Yeah.
Okay,
and we accept that.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Councillor Park.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I foreshadow a motion. You would have heard the previous submitter. Are you in a position to make any comment about the turntable? If so, I'd like to hear that.
The turntable is, look, I'm not a traffic engineer, I should say, to start. But look, the turntable turntables are something that are becoming more common in.
No, I don't mean in generalities. I mean specific to I preempted by asking, are you able to comment on this one?
Do you mean what make and model it is?
Well, not the make and model necessarily, but what might we expect in terms of noise and performance, particularly?
Vibrations as well, Councillor Park.
Look, as I said, I'm not a traffic engineer. I can't sit here and tell you that there won't be...
If the answer's no, that's fine.
No, I can't, but we would accept a condition requiring that details of the turntable be submitted and that details of any noise emissions be provided with that for the council's review and endorsement.
Yeah, all right. No, nothing further, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Park. Mr Brennan, it appears to be no further questions from councillors. You may return to the gallery.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms Lorini, we'll turn to matters arising. Thank you.
Good evening. I'll discuss the design changes with regard to the ramp and in general the conditions. Conditions are not an unusual matter to be put onto permits, including Condition 1 requirements that require design modifications. Things like the ramp should be relatively straightforward to include within the proposal and shouldn't necessitate major design changes. With regard to the golden elm that you discussed at the rear, it is proposed to be replaced with 12 metre high mature height, 12 metres at mature height, replanting to the secluded private open space of that rear dwelling. Council's arborist did review the existing tree there, and while noting that it, is in good condition, did note that its location is very poor right up in the corner of the site, which would potentially impact its long-term viability. Hence, the replacement planting was recommended. With regard to the turntable, I don't want to speak in generalities because I also don't know the model proposed. We do have a condition within the permit to require that it be kept in good working order, and it is included to the basement, so not open to the rear dwellings, which should minimise any noise aspect to that. With regard to waste management, I believe was the other concern. The waste management condition is also one that is often imposed on permits. And with regard to the bins to the basement area should be able to accommodate further bin storage within that area. And I believe not all 15 bins in Burundara go out on, not all 3 bins go out on the same day. Would that?
They do.
Yep, okay. That will be addressed by our waste officer during assessment of the waste management plan.
Are there any further matters arising? That concludes it. Councillors, I'm looking for questions of officers. So we have Councillor Park, you did foreshadow, so that's noted. Councillor Bigger, followed by Councillor Gold.
Yep, thank you for that. I just had a follow-up question, I guess, about the turntable. So when we said that we have a condition that be in good working order, does that mean that then if it is noisy, if it's problematic, do we define that as not in good working order? Meaning, is that the most we can do for a condition? Because what if the model is just noisy and it's in good working order for that model, then it's problematic for the residents and we don't have a lot of ability to help them in that situation? Meaning, is there anything further we can do, or is that the limit?
That's all we could do with the turntable proposed for this development.
Mr Walker might make a few comments.
Thanks. Just to add further to that, the development here would be approved with conditions that require appropriate features and outcomes. And again, a turntable that's included and in good working order would be part of that. There's been an assessment made by officers that the location of the turntable would have a minimal impact on surrounding properties because of its position within the basement, and general residential noise obligations on features within a residential property would still apply. So the EPA noise requirements and impacts would also still apply in future.
Thank you, Mr Walker. Councillor Gold.
Thank you, Chair. Can I go first to the restrictive covenant on the land? And whether I've misunderstood something in there, but I'm quoting directly from the restrictive covenant as printed in the officer's report. It says one of brick. What don't I understand in that one of brick describes?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
The restrictive covenant requires on this piece of land there to be only one of brick. I presume that means a brick house, one only on this piece of land, which is a very clear restrictive covenant on the land. Why are we recommending demolition of that house and construction of 5 dwellings on a house that has a covenant such as this? Maybe I misunderstand it, but it seems fairly clear-cut on the restrictive covenant.
No, lot hereby transferred any building except one of brick on the said land. So it's not restricting it to one dwelling house only, it's restricting it to the building must be built of brick.
Can I suggest that could be interpreted both ways?
I beg your pardon?
I'd hasten to suggest that could potentially be interpreted both ways. One of brick or one of brick. And I've seen many restrictive covenants just like this before, which requires no more than one dwelling in a lot. So it'd be, if you believe and have clear evidence or in practice believe that that's what it means, well, so be it. But I was a little bit surprised that that was on there and not dealt with in any other way.
The officers are comfortable with the advice they've provided, Councillor Gold.
Thank you. Can I ask another question?
Absolutely.
If I may? And this is really probably just a comment because I'm not too sure I'm sure I'll be told we can do nothing about this, but we've talked about the number of dwellings being put on this lot. It reminds me a bit of university days when we used to have, this is going to date me, telephone box crams and how many people can get in a telephone box. This is rather a lot of dwellings. Not only does the turntable point us in that direction, but when you look at the upstairs plan, none of the bedrooms have windows below a certain level. It's really quite
Is there a question in this
purely a
council?
comment, as I said, but I will lead on to another question. Just picking up from Councillor Bigger's queries to do with the tree and the landscaping. Recommendation 5 covers landscaping maintenance. Can the officers please explain how long they can ensure that maintenance occurs for? And will we be assured that the tree, particularly the large tree proposed from the lot, has a chance of growing to its 12 metres?
Thanks to yourself, Chair. Landscaping conditions on this sort of development require the installation of landscaping and then the ongoing maintenance of landscaping. And in theory, that is ongoing forever. So the maintenance of that landscaping in accordance with the landscape plan should be over a long term and should be in perpetuity. Having said that, in practice, there will be things that change over time, particularly long periods of time. And the important elements of the landscape plan is what will take prominence and be of in particular importance to enforcement as time goes on. The provision of tall canopy trees is an absolute essential part of that landscaping provision.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor Gold?
That's all. Thanks very much.
Thank you. There appears to be no further questions. Councillor Park, you foreshadowed a motion.
I did, Chair. It's the officer's recommendation with some words inserted to clause 19, and I'll read those out if the officers can turn to that clause.
So, which is turntable maintenance.
Yes. After the word be, before the word kept, if we insert fit for purpose and not cause noise or vibration beyond the property. And B.
Okay.
That's my motion.
Thank you, Councillor Park. I'm in search of a seconder for that. Councillor Stavro, I think your light was on first. To assist Councillor Park, is there any opposition on this motion? There being no opposition, Councillor Park, I'll ask that you speak to your motion.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'll be very brief. The officer's presentation was fine and really covered off everything. I add those words just as an absolute abundance of caution. In respect of the presentation about the trees, often my understanding of if you go much bigger than the height that's suggested, it's actually a slower settling in and growth. So I'm comfortable with what was said in terms of the tree. I think with this minor modification, the development application is one that ought to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Park. There was no opposition on this item, so I'm going to put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? Declare they carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to item 3.3 of tonight's agenda, which is Camberwell Junction Vision and Priorities Report. This will be introduced by Officer Arturo Ruiz from our placemaking lead. Thank you.
Yeah. Join in for the question.
And Mr. Cowan's actually going to introduce his councillors. There are no presenters on this item, I'm led to believe. Mr. Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. The Camberwell Junction Vision and Priorities Report will be used to engage with the community and traders in the Camberwell Junction precinct. It provides them with an overview of the background research and community engagement undertaken to date, as well as putting forward a vision and set of priorities for the future. Camberwell Junction is a much-loved centre featuring valued heritage buildings, thriving markets and retailers, as well as office businesses and community facilities. It is also well serviced by various transport modes and has good proximity to a number of green spaces. Camberwell Junction, like the rest of Melbourne, is continuing to experience population and economic growth pressures, which need to be carefully planned. As a major activity centre, the junction also plays a vital role in providing employment, shops, services and community facilities to the residents of Boroondara and beyond. All these factors need to be considered as we plan ahead, along with the exciting opportunities to create new public spaces and cultural attractors that will ensure the junction is an attractive destination for the future. The report therefore presents the following aspirational vision for community feedback. Camberwell Junction will be revitalised as a dynamic, desirable and prosperous metropolitan hub. Residents, visitors and locals will be attracted to its thriving retail, smart economy and lively public spaces, attractive character and highly livable urban environment. The Junction precinct will attract significant public and private investment to create an exciting economic and lifestyle destination that is welcoming to all. The Vision and Priorities Report puts forward 6 priorities for the future, including key challenges and opportunities for each. These 6 priorities are promoting a robust and diverse economy, expanding living opportunities, design a high-quality precinct, creating places for people, connecting Camberwell, and prioritising sustainability. Community engagement on the Vision and Priorities report will commence tomorrow, Tuesday, 20th September, and continue for 5 weeks, allowing residents, businesses, workers and visitors to give us their feedback. The feedback from the community will then guide council as we prepare the place and structure plan for Camberwell Junction, which is scheduled for public consultation in the first half of next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Cowan. As aforementioned, councillors, there are no presenters on this item, so we'll go to questions of officers. Councillor Gillies.
Not a question, but just to foreshadow a motion, thanks.
Thank you. There appears to be no questions, so this is fairly... Oh, actually, there is. Councillor Gillies just snuck her light in. Councillor Gillies. Sorry, Councillor Bigger. Apologies.
Sorry, I don't respond to that. My question is just a question of sort of absence. I mean, I did read the report, but I admit I might have missed it in there, but there was no specific reference to the issue about Camberwell Green and whether or not there was some discussion. Is there going to be some discussion of that? Is that going to be presented and discussed with members of the community when, because it is in the area that's covered?
It's a vision and priorities document, so it's still quite high level for engagement purposes. So if the community does have views on that, then they're welcome. But it's probably a bit high level to get into the specifics of that proposal at this stage.
Just to follow up, is there any acknowledgement of the state's position or intent on Camberwell Green?
Again, through yourself, Chair, not specifically in the vision document. Again, as David indicated, it's about setting the objectives and future direction in a broader sense for the Camberwell Junction precinct. It doesn't need to reference that specific project at this point, and the final version of a structure plan and place plan will certainly acknowledge the outcomes that have been agreed for those particular sites and locations.
Thank you. No further questions from councillors. So, Councillor Gillies, you foreshadowed a motion.
Thank you, Chair. The officer's recommendation.
Thank you. And I'm in search of a seconder for that. Councillor Addis.
I'm happy to second, thanks.
Thank you. And to assist Councillor Gillies, is there any opposition on this item? There is opposition noted. I'll move to you as the mover of the motion to speak to your motion. Councillor Gillies.
Thank you, Chair. A special word of thanks to the officers and all the work that's gone into developing the priorities and concepts. This report summarises the research and the community engagement to date, which really is from late last year. It's the next step. It's a step towards development of the plan. The plan will then present initiatives, development, controls and projects. This is the next step to go back to the community and seek approval that we're on track. I commend the motion to my colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Councillor Ellis, do you seek to reserve your right?
Yes, I will, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Franco.
Thank you. I think a lot of good work has gone into this report, and my opposition shouldn't be interpreted as a reflection of what I see as many of the positives here. My opposition is primarily and squarely focused on the omission of Camberwell Green, a green space, a vision for a green space in the heart of the civic precinct, a vision that 4 councillors sitting in this chamber, including Councillor Gillies, stood for election on and committed to seeking to deliver. I don't blame the officers for not including it. So I understand that this council, as a majority position, has not supported Camberwell Green, but and if the vote here today were probably one of 6-5 or 5-5, I'd be thinking about my position in terms of consultation, because I appreciate this is a matter for public consultation. So I also think that perhaps council's opposition and entrenched opposition, it's not just Camberwell Green, it's the broader green space there, is something that is going to come back and potentially hurt and embarrass this council. But Look, at the same time, I welcome public feedback, and I understand the position that officers are in for not including it, so I don't have any concern in that regard. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Addis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, I'd like to thank the officers too. A lot of work goes into this and a lot of thought. And I very much want to echo what Councillor Gillies said, that this is a higher order document. It's not a document that perhaps has all the detailed directions, because rightly so, that will be the next step after we've heard from the community. And things like Camberwell Green, it seems to me they're not appropriate at this point. I probably should say, just as an aside, I wonder why we would even be having this discussion, given that it appears to be taken out of our hands completely. But that aside, I do think that it's very important to remember that this is a step and, in my mind, entirely appropriate the way it has been presented to us. So I do thank the officers for the work that's gone into it, and Councillor Gillies, whose ward it's in, and others who have been involved in the committee. And I certainly support the motion as put by Councillor Gillies.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. Councillor Park.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I firstly acknowledge and welcome Councillor Franco's sudden interest in not embarrassing council. That's great to hear. But quite frankly, the discussion about the Camberwell Green project, we've heard very clear advice about its relevance. The other thing is something's happening in November which might change all of that anyway. So let's just wait and see. It's absolutely irrelevant to what's being discussed and considered tonight. Ultimately, it'll be a decision if the state government is re-elected and chooses to go down a certain path, and that'll happen, and that'll be one of the physical factors that'll be taken into account. But otherwise, I just can't see the relevance of it.
Thank you, Councillor Park. Before I move back to the mover of the motion, I'll just say, for the interest of it, this debate's revolved around Camberwell Green, to which I've got a conflict. But noting that this is one of many items of common interest across this whole precinct, I'm not saying I've got a conflict on this actual plan that's in front of us at the moment, which I think is very fitting to go out to the community for consultation. And I'd encourage all councillors to support it on that basis. Returning to you as the mover. Thanks, Councillor Gillies.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing more to add, but just to reinforce the message that this is not a project plan. This is going back to the community with concepts and priorities. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. I'll put that motion now to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? I declare that motion carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to item 4, general business. Are there any items of general business this evening? There being none. Item 5, urgent business. Any items of urgent business? There being none. Items of confidential business? There being none. Our gallery has almost left us, bar a couple remaining. So for those that are seated here, we're about to conclude our Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting. So I declare the meeting closed at 7:26. Thank you, gallery and officers and councillors. Thank you, everyone.